Now that we've seen the causes and types of distance we feel between ourselves and the Old Testament, we should turn to a second topic. What relevance does the Old Testament have for our lives? Why should we expect such a distant book to have anything worthwhile to say to us today? Well, there are many answers to this question, but without a doubt, the most important response is that we must still expect the Old Testament to be important for our lives because the New Testament teaches us that it is. Sadly, if ever a teaching of the New Testament has been misunderstood in our day, it's this one. Far too many Christians read the New Testament as if it teaches that the Old Testament is passé, as if the New Testament has done away with our need for the Old. But in reality, the New Testament says just the opposite. As we will see, it tells us that the Old Testament is absolutely essential for Christian living. Full life in Christ simply cannot be accomplished unless we draw guidance from the Old Testament. There are many ways in which the New Testament teaches us that the Old Testament is relevant for our lives today, but we will focus on just two. First, we'll look at the teachings of Jesus, and second, we'll consider the teachings of the Apostle Paul. Let's think first about what Jesus had to say about the relevance of the Old Testament. To gain a balanced view of what Jesus taught about the importance of the Old Testament for us today, we'll look briefly into two aspects of Jesus' teaching. First, his apparently negative comments about the Old Testament, and second, his positive affirmations of the Old Testament's relevance. Let's look first at some of the teachings of Jesus that appear at first glance to present a negative view of the Old Testament. Many Christians who believe that Jesus brought an end to the relevance of the Old Testament turn to the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapters 5 through 7 as evidence for their views. At one point in his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus touched on several ethical issues, and his approach to these matters leaves many with the impression that he actually opposed the teachings of the Old Testament. Listen to the following familiar passages. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 22, we read these words about murder. You have heard that it was said to people long ago, "Do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment." But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 and 28, Jesus referred to adultery in this way. You have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 31 and 32, he spoke of divorce. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for marital unfaithfulness causes her to become an adulteress, and anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 34, we see the pattern again as Jesus addressed oaths. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "Do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord." But I tell you, do not swear at all. Jesus also spoke of revenge in Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 and 39. You have heard that it was said, "Eye for eye and tooth for tooth," but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And finally, Christ addressed the issue of love for enemies in this way in Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 44. You have heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, all followers of Christ should agree that Jesus is God's supreme revelation, and that his teachings were much fuller than the teachings of the Old Testament. He penetrated to the heart and expanded to the farthest horizons in ways that the Old Testament never reached. But unfortunately, many Christians have understood these verses to teach that Jesus' views on murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, revenge, and love for enemies actually contradicted the teachings of the Old Testament. Their reasoning usually goes something like this. They say that the Old Testament taught that physical murder is wrong, but that Jesus turned attention to the heart full of hatred. The Old Testament forbade physical adultery, but Jesus went further to talk about adultery of the heart. Regarding divorce, many believe that the Old Testament permitted divorce for a broad range of reasons, whereas Jesus disagreed with this Old Testament teaching and insisted on sexual immorality as the only grounds for divorce. Regarding oaths, they argue that the Old Testament said not to break an oath, but that Jesus instructed his followers never to take oaths. These same interpreters often believe that the Old Testament endorsed a practice of personal revenge, an eye for an eye, but that Jesus taught that we should forgive. They assume that the Old Testament taught love for neighbors and hatred for enemies, but Jesus expanded the command to love enemies as well. Now, if these popular understandings of Jesus' teachings are anywhere near the truth, then we have good reason for thinking that Jesus came to free his followers from the ethical authority of the Old Testament. But when we reflect more closely on what Jesus actually said in Matthew chapter 5, we soon discover that this outlook is far from adequate. Although Jesus' revelation is greater than that of the Old Testament, he did not in any way contradict the teachings of the Old Testament. Rather, his intention was to affirm the Old Testament by refuting some common misunderstandings of its teachings.